making my throat kind of itchy. So I don't love that. I was truly about to flip a table when I found this out. Hi, my name is Carla. I've been knitting for 1 year and 3 months, and these are my projects. So it's been about 4 weeks since I last filmed. I didn't want to wait that long, but I've just been so busy. It was my birthday, so I spent a lot of time with loved ones, and then after that, my chronic symptoms were flaring, so it made it really hard to get anything done. Something that does work well with my chronic symptoms is that I sit on my couch a lot, meaning I get a lot of my knitting done, so that leads to having lots of updates. So let's get into projects. I don't have finished objects this week, just whips, because I have been casting on like crazy. I also want to mention really quick what I'm wearing right now is the Folklore cardigan by Gunderson. I wear this a lot, so I won't talk about it too much, but I did make it in the Pick Swish DK. So let's get to whips. So the first work in progress that I want to talk about is the biggest one I have, and that is the porcelain sweater. I am so proud of this. This is my first color work ever. I'm going to hold it like this so you can see more of it. This is my first color work ever, and I think it looks so cute. This pattern is by the designer Lee Knit. I was heavily inspired by one of my friends, Manda, on TikTok. She's doing it in white and pink, which was so cute, so I was inspired to do it in white and purple, and I have no regrets about the color choices. I'm working this up in Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino in the color Cloud. That's the white color. If you know Knitting for Olive, you know that they have like 4, 5, 6 different whites. This is the one that is like slightly pinkish, and I really like that. And I'm knitting the contrast color in 2 yarns. One is Knitting for Olive Merino, so this is the fingering weight yarn, and this is in Dusty Violet, and I am holding that with a strand of fingering weight alpaca from Hobbii, and this is the soft alpaca in the color Hydrangea Purple. Before talking about the sweater, I want to talk about the swatches I knit up. So this was the first swatch that I knit for this project. As you can see, the stockinette is a lot wider than the color work portion. So the gauge is supposed to be 21 stitches per 4 inches and 26 rows or 25 for the color work. This was my first time ever doing stranded color work, so you know, the floats are kind of messy. I didn't really know how to tension properly, and as you can see, I did not meet gauge because this part is just way too tight. What I did get to do with the swatch is I got to test a bunch of different yarn combinations. So if you saw my last podcast, I talked about wanting to branch out and try different yarns. So I've been trying things like mohair, suri alpaca, also merinos that are not superwash. So this is my first time using pretty much all of these fibers, except the alpaca one, which I had from before. So in my journey to test out these different fibers, I thought my journey was to just test out how I like working with them, but I didn't realize I'd also be struggling so much with how my body reacts to them. So I knew that like mohair was a little iffy, but I had hope. I swatched up a project that I'll talk about later, and I instantly felt like I was like my throat and my eyes were burning, and I didn't like that, obviously, so I've been very hesitant to work with mohair. And then after that, I started using this Knitting for Olive Merino for the first time, and I also was having like an allergic reaction to it, and I was truly about to flip a table when I found this out, because I thought that like merino is one of the gentlest types of fibers. How could I be having a reaction to it? And it kind of like crushed all my dreams of working with Knitting for Olive, which I've always wanted to work with because their color range is so nice and people really like the garments, and a lot of patterns recommend their yarns. But yeah, so I went through a rough few weeks trying out some different yarns, and yeah, as you can see, I am still working with it. So this is still a bit of an experiment. In my journey of trying these yarns, I realized that I hadn't been taking my allergy medicine, my Flonase, for like a few weeks. And so I think that that definitely helped when I started taking it again. I can't say there's absolutely no irritation working with this now, so I do think that regular like superwash merino is probably the best yarn for me in terms of allergies, but I can tolerate this swatch now, so I'm hoping I can continue to tolerate it. I'll talk a bit more about my allergies later, but I wanted to talk first about choosing my colors. So I don't know if you can see, but I used 3 different yarn combinations. I used just plain merino down here. I used merino held with a strand of alpaca here, and then I used mohair up here. And I did that so I could see, you know, how they looked and also how I liked working with them. I was still kind of having mohair irritation when I was making the decision, so even though it looks kind of okay, I decided to play it safe and not use the mohair. And also, I actually kind of think that the alpaca section, which is this middle section, looks the best, which is why I chose that. I did this swatch, the second swatch, in only that combination, and I think I made my floats like a little bit looser, so I think this is closer to gauge, but it's still not quite the right gauge. But I think I actually, in this practice, got more comfortable working on color work, so I think my actual garment is meeting gauge because I was measuring it and it aligns with the measurements that are in the pattern so far, so I'm pretty happy about that. I wanted to show, this is the mohair that I was using for the top part of the swatch. And then this is the alpaca, and then this is the merino. I've only been working on this for a few days, but I truly haven't been able to put it down. So I actually, that's literal for a bit of it. Like when I was doing the first chart, I literally thought that if I put it down, I would ruin everything. So I did the first chart mostly all in one sitting. It wasn't too hard to do the first chart because I did my swatches in the chart, and so I felt like I had fully practiced it twice, so I just had to like do it again. This sweater is a drop shoulder construction, so you start by making the back panel and then you put those stitches on hold and then you do the shoulders one by one, and then you put them together and you knit the chart again for the front section, which is this part. And since it's knit flat, that means that you are doing color work flat, meaning you have to knit and you have to also purl. And that's a little bit challenging, but I think the chart itself is not so hard that I was able to figure it out. It's only 2 colors, so it's not like the most complicated color work. There's a lot of things that I learned while doing this. One is you don't have to keep carrying all, this seems really intuitive for people that have done color work before, but you don't have to keep holding both of your yarns if you're doing a row that's all one color. I don't know why I didn't think about this. I was just knitting in one color and holding the other yarn behind for the whole row, sometimes one way and the other way, which completely doesn't make any sense. You can knit in just one color and then like reattach the next color the next time, or like hold it along the side or something like that. The other detail about this is that, so I don't know if you can see, but I feel like the shoulders, they look both seamless and lumpy, which is a funny thing to say, but I think it is true. So there are 2 ways to add the shoulders onto this piece. One way is to knit a separate piece and then seam it on, and the other way is to pick up stitches and do short rows. So because short rows are like the more advanced technique, I thought that would be like the more correct way to do it. So I did the short rows and I thought that it might look better, but now looking back, I think that maybe doing separate panels and seaming them would have like a nicer straight line. Meanwhile, the effect of the short rows is it looks like this. I'm not sure if I just didn't do the short rows that well or if this will block out or what, but I just like, I think it looks kind of funny, and you can definitely see where the short rows like start and finish and where I cast on more stitches and stuff like that. This is what it looks like on the inside. So I think because the inside is lumpy, the outside looks lumpy, but I don't know. If you know what's going on, please let me know. I think that's all I'll say about this one, but I am going to keep working on this and I am hoping to have lots of progress by the next time I film. I'm in this local group of knitters in San Francisco, and there's a group of people within that group doing color work, and I just went to a color work meetup where we were all working on this, or we were all working on color work sweaters, and it was just so much fun and it was really motivating and I learned a lot from them. So it's motivating me to keep working on this so I can show progress the next time I go to that meetup. Okay, on to my next project. This is my Sophie shawl that I'm working up in a skein of Sewrella's colorway Enchanted in their classic DK base, and also knitting for Olive soft silk mohair in the color artichoke purple. This is one of my fiber experiments where I was trying to figure out whether I can tolerate mohair. I talked about this earlier, but when I was working on this, I was just like feeling so much irritation in my like respiratory system, I guess. And I was really disappointed because it feels really nice and it doesn't irritate my skin. So I'm convinced that I only have like, I guess like a respiratory allergy. I don't know if there's really a difference, but all I can say is I don't have irritation on my skin. I also did a test where I slept with this inside my shirt just to see if I would get like a rash or something like that. And I didn't. And I ended up doing that with every other test that I do. I put it in my shirt overnight and see if it irritates me. And looks like there's no rash. I put the whole skein in my top this time. And none of it so far has irritated me in my skin, at least, which is making me really hopeful. And that's why I haven't stopped working on this. So I found that one, working with the mohair with my air purifier on high really helped and it didn't bother me as much. I also found that obviously taking my allergy medicine, taking it more seriously and taking it twice a day has made everything more bearable. But like I said earlier, I never had any issues when I worked with superwash. So I know that superwash is probably the best yarn for me, but I still, because of my reasons of like wanting to try different textures and also wanting to make things that are more durable, I still want to try out these other fibers. So if I can make them work for me in a way that doesn't bother me, then that would be great. So I'm still working on this. I'm still hopeful because it doesn't bother my skin and because I think it is not bothering me right now because of my allergy medicine. I think the last time that I was knitting with it, I think it was like medium bothersome. I know that the allergy medicine takes like a few weeks before it like reaches its full potential. So we'll see about that. I also think the ultimate test is going to be actually wearing this around and seeing if that is nice, because if it isn't, then, you know, I really shouldn't be using this yarn. I also think that I've heard that knitting for Olive is very soft, but it's also it sheds a lot. So if I found a mohair that doesn't shed as much, then maybe that would be okay. But I'm convinced that what I'm allergic to is probably like I don't know if it's like animal dander or it's just the idea of having like loose particles in the air is what's irritating my nose, and like a combination of like air purification and allergy medicine hopefully will help with that. The other thing is like I'm pretty sure I'm not allergic to lanolin because I dunk my hands in wool wash like all the time, and I feel like if I was allergic to lanolin that wouldn't be okay. And also because I'm not getting rashes, I think I'm not allergic to lanolin, but I'm learning every day. So I am going to continue with these experiments. But the reason why I care so much about being able to work with mohair is because I want to make the champagne cardigan. I already have a DK that I think will look great in the project, but I need to pair that with a mohair. And if I can't tolerate mohair, I don't think I'll make that project. I think I have to pick something else, but I'm still hoping. Also, like, knitting is the only thing that makes me happy these days. And considering even the knitting for Olive merino was bothering me sometimes, I feel like if I ever really was really getting bothered by these materials, I feel like I would consider legitimately going to an allergist. I don't know if they could do something for me, but I would try and see if somebody could help me because I really want to be able to work with these fibers. Okay, so a bit about this pattern. There's not too much to say about it. It's a triangle. I actually really enjoyed working on it. I know that people have mixed feelings about this pattern, like it's too common, it's too basic, whatever. I don't know. I think it's nice. I think that I like the way it looks and I want to own it. And I think it looks really nice with this yarn combination. I've also heard that people have a hard time counting, and I think that it hasn't been so bad for me. I feel like you can clearly see the increases, which are done using a knit front and back. So you can see like the bar where the increase is made. So I don't know, I didn't have a hard time with the counting, but yeah, I am like almost halfway through and then I'll start decreasing. And I only have one skein of this, so I will probably start decreasing in a different color, a different like complementary color, and I think it'll look kind of interesting, hopefully. Okay, it's getting dark, so I turned on a light, so hopefully you don't hate that, but I think my best project was a porcelain sweater, so I'm glad that you got to see that in the daylight. So the next thing I have to show is my Heartless top by Midsummer Knits. I actually don't have much progress on this at all. I haven't been spending much time on it, but I did want to show that I did, after the fact, stick some wire in, and it definitely makes the heart look more like a heart, and it looks better when I'm wearing it. I just have to find a way to kind of tuck these in. I don't love the way that the stitches look around the heart. I don't know what I could have done to improve it, but I feel like this is my fault because other projects that I've seen on Instagram don't look like this. But I'm gonna try to finish this up by the next time I film because I want this off the needles. I want to own it. I want to wear it. And also I have projects that are begging me for these size 3 needles back. So hopefully I can finish this soon and then I can get back to those other projects. By the way, I'm making this in Knit Pick Stroll Held Double in the color Hazy Violet. Okay, my next project is a semi-finished object. It's just semi-finished because I haven't blocked the other sock. These are my Earth Yarns Uneek socks. I knit these as a gift. I knit them separately, so I am not yet sure if they are the same size yet. I'm really hoping that they are. The stripes line up mostly, but I will have to see when I block this one if it looks the same. I am truly obsessed with this yarn. I think the fade is so cool. And yeah, I would use this yarn again. It was a little bit expensive, but I think it is really cool. Not much more to say about this one. I did them on size 0 dpns. I followed the heel flap and gusset pattern from Summer Lee. And yeah, Earth Yarns Uneek sock set and Knit Pick Stroll for the toe and heel, I think in the color Blue Steel. Okay, so last time I recorded a podcast, I mentioned that I was going to start a pair of socks in 4 colors of Knit Pick Stroll. Here they are. I was very heavily inspired by the fade of the Uneek yarn. I just realized that I knit these socks in 2 different colors. Oh my. It's not completely my fault. I just dug up the yarn tags and my invoice and I found that I ordered 2 different colors, one blue and one green. The blue was called Rainstorm and the green was called Forest. But what they gave me was a blue called Rainstorm and a blue-green called Rainforest. So I knit one of these socks in the blue and one in the blue-green, and they are very close, but they are not the same yarn. I can't think about this right now. Let's get back to the video. So I decided to make my own fade with the 4 colors. I guess it's 5 colors. So a few things about these socks. They are 2x2 rib, heel flap and gusset, and I am knitting them on size 00 dpn. So this is the first time that I have used size 00 dpns. I'm still on my journey to try to get to 10 stitches per inch consistently, and I think 00 is maybe the way to go. We will see. I have been working on these at the same time to try to make sure that they are the same size. not like other socks that I've done recently. I also did that because I switched needles halfway through the project, and I think it was a good call that I did them two at a time, kind of. And I am going to continue to do them that way so the gauge stays consistent. But this is just because I ordered multiple kinds of DPNs and they came at different times. I started working on these using these pink DPNs from Susan Bates. I think they're very cute. I love pink. I liked working with them because they were pink, but that was about the only reason why I liked them. I had a few issues with them. One is that they're long. I think they're either 6 or 7 inches, and I think that's a little too long for socks. Maybe for other types of accessories they'd be better, but they just kept poking into me and also like snagging on my sleeves while I was using them, so that wasn't great. The other thing is that they were kind of flimsy, so they didn't feel like I felt like I could break them at any moment. And that became a lot more obvious when I switched to using hia or haya needles. These look just like my chagu needles, but they are sharper. These are just the 2 sets of needles that I could find that I could order to my house. So the hia needles are way more sturdy. They're way sharper. I don't think sharp is that important to me, but sturdy is very important to me. I found that for some reason, I don't know if it's the sturdiness or what, but when I moved on to the hia needles, I could knit a lot tighter, and that's without forcing. My gauge just got tighter from using them, and I was knitting, I like to think, the same way. So I don't know if that's really a thing, but I definitely was able to knit tighter. I felt like with the Susan Bates needles, I was knitting at the same gauge that I was knitting with my size 0 chagu needles. So I just don't think I'll be using those much. I mostly use them just to hold the stitches on one sock while I'm working on the other sock. But anyway, these are the socks. Hopefully I will finish them by the next time. Okay, so that is it for my projects. I will save the rest of the projects for another time. Now I'm going to be talking about yarn. So I have been giving updates in my last few podcasts about how I am trying to use more yarn in my stash than I buy. So for February, I was definitely able to do that. I only bought the 3 skeins of mohair. The totals for February are, I bought 75 grams and I used 409 grams. So that's a negative 334 grams for the month of February. That's the first time I've been negative in a long time. It probably will be my last for a while. So for March, I've already bought a lot of yarn. I think that March is definitely going to be a yarn stash positive month, and I think that's okay with me. As I mentioned, I am still experimenting with a bunch of different fibers, so I think that while I'm still in this experimenting learning phase, I think I'm going to be continuing to add to my stash, which I think is fine for the stage that I'm in. There is a good reason, and I'm going to keep going with that. I'm just trying to make sure that each of my purchases have a purpose and that they're intentional. I'm going to share my acquisitions. I did buy a bit of yarn on my birthday weekend, and I also bought yarn for the porcelain sweater. So this is my box of new yarn. I've also been trying to keep my yarn in plastic boxes because I have become aware of bugs and stuff, and I don't want that to happen to my yarn stash. I want to protect my yarn from bugs and whatever else, dust and stuff. So I am trying to do this. I also saw the tip to put your yarn in smaller boxes rather than huge bins so that they stay separate just in case there's a problem with any one box. It's like contained to that box. So I asked for these boxes for my birthday. So first is the yarn that I got for my porcelain sweater, which I already talked about. So that's the Knitting for Olive yarn in the colors Cloud and Dusty Violet. I got 12 of these and 4 of these. And then the other yarn I got is from a local yarn store. It isn't the closest one to me, but it's a very cute yarn store called the Royal Bee Yarn Company in Pacifica. I bought a few things So one is I bought an incredibly boring palette of gray yarns, but there's a reason for them. I'm trying to make the Sporty Skort by Florence Miller, and so I got these 3 gray yarns that I'd like to marl together to make a kind of heathered gray skirt. So this one is Yarn Citizen Unity Fingering in the color Graphite. This one is Haiku Merino Lace Light, so that is a lace weight. And this is in the color, it is just numbered, so, oh, this is in the color Charcoal. And this one is the same one in the color Shade. And these 2 are lace weight and put together with the fingering. That should work up to a DK. I'm hoping to make a swatch of that to show soon. So these 3 yarns that I just showed are 100% non-superwash merino. So again, going along with my non-superwash journey, I am going to see if these bother me and yeah, hope for the best because I'd like to start using more non-superwash wools. The only other one I got is this alpaca silk. It's called Silver Pennies Fluff and Stuff, and it is 74% baby suri alpaca and 26% silk, and it's in the color Champignon. Yeah, so I have mixed feelings about this one. Honestly, just holding it close to me right now is making my throat kind of itchy, so I don't love that. Let me put this away for a bit and then I'll talk about it a bit more. In my mohair journey, I wanted to try different kinds of fluffy yarns as well. So what people often recommend to me is if I don't like mohair, try suri alpaca. It's a slightly thicker alternative. So I knit this swatch, and this is as far as I could go. I held this with a DK that I had in stash. I had to stop after like 2 inches because my eyes were literally burning. I just couldn't take it anymore. But this was during my time of not using my allergy medicine. That's actually when I realized I had forgotten to use my allergy medicine. So considering it's making my throat itchy right now, but we'll see. I also, I think it feels really nice, but I don't necessarily love the fabric. So this is what it looks like. As you can see, the alpaca definitely takes up space. It takes up space, it takes up color. It like dominates some parts of the swatch. It has a different effect to mohair. I think people say mohair is hairy and suri alpaca is fluffy, which I think is true. Also, mohair is kind of like sheer. It's kind of invisible. It kind of gives like a sheer layer, but it doesn't really, in my experience, overpower. Whereas this one, you know, the suri really wants to be seen. It's also thicker than mohair. It is very soft. I also slept with this one in my shirt. It was fine, but I think maybe this is not the fiber for me. What is confusing though is that the hobbii alpaca doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother my throat, it doesn't bother my eyes. It is not like a fluffy brushed alpaca, so maybe a spun alpaca is different and is better for me. Maybe I should stay away from fluffy yarns at all, but I'm not done with that yarn yet. I do maybe want to knit up a little Sophie scarf or something like that and continue to see if I can tolerate it. I'm not super hopeful, but I already have the yarn. I might as well experiment with it. I know it's been like a bumpy road trying these different fibers, but I'm feeling still pretty blessed that there hasn't been any skin irritation. So hopefully it's possible that for most of these yarns I can still wear them and maybe it'll just be a little annoying to have the fluff in the air. Hopefully, but yeah, so I'm feeling blessed, I guess, that it's just a respiratory issue. I don't know if that's a blessing, but yeah, I'm just glad I'm not getting rashes. Okay, so that is everything for this episode. Thank you so much for watching till the end. If you like this episode, please consider leaving a thumbs up, leaving a comment. I respond to everyone. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you next time. Bye!